Men over 50, top 8 spices that supercharge testosterone and male energy. Now, gentlemen, let me stop right there, because I know some of you are already rolling your eyes. Spices? Really? You're probably thinking, Doc, there's no way a sprinkle of pepper or a pinch of turmeric is going to bring back the man I used to be. And I get it. It sounds too simple. But let me challenge that thought. What if I told you science is proving that certain everyday spices, the very ones sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now, can help raise testosterone, fire up metabolism, and restore energy and drive in men over 50? What if I told you that these natural ingredients can protect your heart, improve circulation, reduce inflammation, and yes, even bring back confidence in the bedroom? You see, the truth is that testosterone doesn't just fade away with age. It's influenced by what you eat, how you live, and the signals you send your body every single day. And these 8 spices, they're not gimmicks. They've been studied in universities, tested in clinics, and used for centuries in traditional medicine to keep men strong, sharp, and vital. Some of you might already agree, nodding your heads because you've heard whispers about things like garlic or turmeric. Others might still be skeptical, thinking, come on, Doc, that's just kitchen talk. Well, I promise you, by the end of this video, you're going to look at your spice rack with a whole new respect. And number 1 on the list, let's just say it's fiery, it's powerful, and you'll never look at dinner the same way again. But before we dive into the details, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button, share this video with a friend who could use a boost, and don't forget to subscribe. Every click helps us bring you more life-changing, science-backed tips to keep you feeling younger, stronger, and more alive, no matter your age. All right, buckle up, gentlemen, because what you're about to hear could be the simplest, most surprising upgrade to your health and vitality you've had in decades. Testosterone and aging, why it matters more after 50. Testosterone is often thought of only in terms of sex drive, but it's much more than that. It's the hormone that fuels a man's strength, bone density, energy, focus, motivation, and even mood. When testosterone is at healthy levels, men feel like themselves, clear-minded, confident, and strong. The problem is that testosterone naturally begins to decline around age 30, dropping about 1% per year. By 60, many men have lost up to half of what they had in their youth, but not every man ages the same way. Some stay vibrant well into their 70s, while others feel decades older. The difference often comes down to lifestyle and diet. The Massachusetts Male Aging Study found that nearly 40% of men over 60 have clinically low testosterone, but those who stay active, eat nutrient-rich foods, and maintain a healthy weight usually keep their levels higher. Low testosterone doesn't just affect intimacy. It raises the risk of diabetes, belly fat, obesity, and heart disease. It's tied to depression, lack of motivation, and even early cognitive decline. Studies have shown men with lower testosterone perform worse on memory and problem-solving tests, making hormone health a critical part of overall aging. The good news is that the body can still produce testosterone if given the right support. And one of the simplest ways to do that is through diet. Spices, often overlooked, are powerful sources of compounds that reduce inflammation, improve circulation, and even send signals that encourage the body to make more testosterone. Over the years, I've seen men turn their health around not with expensive therapies, but by building daily habits, including the smart use of these natural spices. So the real question is this: will you accept the slow decline, or will you take advantage of nature's pharmacy that's been sitting in your kitchen all along? Because what comes next could make the difference between simply getting older or staying strong and energized for years to come. Spice number 8, Fenugreek, the ancient testosterone tonic. Fenugreek is one of the most studied spices for men's health. Known for its use in Indian cooking, it has been valued in traditional medicine for centuries to boost vitality, improve digestion, and restore strength after illness. Today, modern science is confirming those benefits. A 2016 study in phytotherapy research showed that men who took fenugreek extract daily for 12 weeks had higher levels of free testosterone, improved mood, and better sexual function. Another trial in the International Journal of Exercise Science found that men who trained with weights and added fenugreek gained more strength and lean muscle than those who didn't. Researchers believe fenugreek works by slowing down the enzymes that convert testosterone into estrogen, helping the body preserve more of the hormone it already produces. I've seen this in real life. Mark, a 58-year-old former football coach, came to me tired, heavier around the waist, and low on confidence. Instead of starting him on hormone therapy, I recommended simple changes: better sleep, regular strength training, and a cup of fenugreek tea each morning. 6 months later, his energy had returned, his confidence was back, and his lab results showed a 15% increase in free testosterone. His wife and even his gym buddies noticed the difference. Larger reviews back up what I see in my clinic. A 2020 meta-analysis in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology concluded that fenugreek consistently improves testosterone, libido, and quality of life in men over 40. The results were clear across multiple trials and populations, making fenugreek one of the most reliable natural supports for male hormones. Adding it to your routine is simple. Brew a teaspoon of seeds in hot water for tea, mix the powder into soups or curries, or sprinkle a little into a morning smoothie. One thing to note is that fenugreek can give sweat a maple-like scent. It's harmless, and many men don't mind it, but it's worth knowing before you start. So I'll ask you this. If a natural, affordable spice can help protect your testosterone, improve your energy, and support your confidence, why wouldn't you use it? Sometimes the most powerful solutions are not found in prescriptions, but in simple habits you can build right at home. Spice number 7. Ginger, the circulation and hormone booster. Most people think of ginger as a remedy for nausea or a spice to add flavor to meals, but for men over 50 it can be much more. It's a natural booster for testosterone, circulation, and overall vitality. A landmark 2012 study in the Tikrit Medical Journal found that men struggling with infertility who supplemented with ginger saw a 17% rise in testosterone and significant improvements in sperm health. Other research shows that ginger lowers oxidative stress in the testes, helping the cells that produce testosterone work more efficiently. It also raises nitric oxide levels, which widens blood vessels, improves blood flow, and supports both physical performance and male function. Animal studies confirm the same pattern. Ginger not only protects testicular health, but also enhances antioxidant defenses and reduces inflammation, two major factors in age-related hormone decline. A 2020 review in the Biomolecules Journal concluded that ginger consistently improves reproductive hormones and fertility markers, showing how broad its impact can be. In my clinic, I've noticed men who add ginger to their daily routine often feel the difference quickly. Energy feels steadier, recovery after workouts is faster, and circulation improves. One of my patients, Harold, age 62, used to feel exhausted halfway through his golf games. We introduced ginger into his morning smoothie and evening tea. Within weeks, he described feeling lighter on his feet with greater stamina and focus. Another patient with borderline high blood pressure noticed that ginger tea helped him not only with energy, but also with maintaining healthier blood pressure readings. In practical terms, ginger is easy to use. Fresh ginger tea made by steeping a thumb-sized piece in boiling water with lemon is both refreshing and restorative. Ground ginger can be added to stir-fries, soups, smoothies, or even sprinkled over roasted chicken. And when paired with turmeric, it creates a powerful anti-inflammatory combination that supports joint health as well as hormone balance. One caution: because ginger naturally thins the blood, men who take anticoagulant medications should talk with their doctor before using it in large amounts. For most men, though, it's safe, effective, and affordable. So here's something worth asking yourself. If a simple daily habit like drinking ginger tea could improve your energy, protect your testosterone, and even enhance your circulation, why not give it a try? Sometimes the difference between feeling older and feeling alive again comes down to adding the right ingredient to your everyday routine. Spice number 6, Ashwagandha, the stress-busting powerhouse. Ashwagandha isn't just another herb. It's been called the strength of the stallion in Ayurvedic medicine, and for good reason. For centuries, it has been used to restore vitality, ease fatigue, and improve male fertility. Modern science now supports these claims. A 2019 clinical trial published in the American Journal of Men's Health showed that overweight men taking ashwagandha for 16 weeks experienced nearly a 15% increase in testosterone compared to placebo. Another study in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition found that men supplementing with ashwagandha gained more muscle mass, greater strength, and faster recovery than those who didn't. The main reason is simple. Ashwagandha lowers cortisol, the stress hormone that works directly against testosterone. When stress drops, testosterone has the chance to rise. I've seen it happen with my own patients. A 61-year-old executive came to me worn out by constant stress, poor sleep, and rising blood pressure. His testosterone levels were slipping toward the low range, and he felt it in his energy and focus. We began with a nightly ritual of warm milk mixed with ashwagandha powder before bed. Within 3 months, he was sleeping deeply, waking with more clarity, and his testosterone rose by 12%. He joked with me, "Doc, my wife says she got a new husband." And in truth, it wasn't the herb alone. It was the way Ashwagandha helped him manage stress, restore rest, and let his body recover. Ashwagandha has also been studied for its effects on endurance and resilience. A 2015 randomized controlled trial found that men taking it for 12 weeks improved their VO2 max, a marker of cardiovascular fitness, while also reporting reduced fatigue. This suggests that beyond boosting hormones, it helps men feel and perform younger by supporting both physical and mental stamina. It's easy to use. Half a teaspoon of the powdered root stirred into warm milk at night is the traditional method. It can also be blended into smoothies or taken in capsule form for convenience. I often remind patients that consistency matters more than dosage. Small daily habits create the environment for hormones to thrive. Of course, a word of caution, ashwagandha can affect thyroid function, so men with thyroid conditions should check with their doctor first. But for most men, it's safe, well-tolerated, and highly effective. So let me ask you, if stress is quietly draining your energy and lowering your testosterone, what would it mean to give your body a simple, natural way to fight back? Sometimes, regaining your edge isn't about doing more, but about finally giving your system the chance to rest, recover, and rebuild. That's the real power of ashwagandha. Spice number 5, black pepper. The testosterone amplifier. Black pepper might look ordinary, but it holds extraordinary power thanks to a compound called piperine. Piperine enhances nutrient absorption, especially of zinc and selenium, two minerals critical for testosterone production, and it improves circulation and metabolism, supporting stamina and energy. A 2013 study in the Journal of Food Science showed that piperine increased the absorption of curcumin from turmeric by an astonishing 2,000%, making black pepper a true amplifier for other testosterone-protecting spices. Another paper in the Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine highlighted how piperine protects testicular tissue from oxidative stress and supports reproductive hormones. In my clinic, I've seen the difference that a simple change like this can make. George, a 65-year-old patient, was already eating a clean diet, but his energy was uneven and his lab work showed his zinc levels were lower than ideal. I suggested he add freshly ground black pepper to his meals, particularly when he used turmeric. At first he laughed, thinking it was too simple to matter. But within a few months he felt more consistent energy throughout the day. No more afternoon slumps, and his zinc levels improved, without increasing his supplements. It was a perfect reminder that sometimes the body doesn't need more, it just needs to use what it already has more efficiently. Science supports this idea. A 2018 review in Critical Reviews in Food Science and Nutrition found that piperine not only enhances nutrient bioavailability, but also shows antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects that protect the very cells responsible for hormone production. This means black pepper works on multiple levels, helping your body absorb key minerals, reducing the oxidative stress that damages testosterone, and improving circulation so hormones can do their job effectively. The way to use it is simple but important. Always choose freshly ground pepper, not pre-ground, since the active compounds lose potency quickly once exposed to air. Sprinkle it on meats, eggs, and vegetables, or combine it with turmeric and a healthy fat like olive oil to maximize absorption. Even small amounts used consistently can make a difference over time. So here's a question worth asking. If one of the simplest spices in your kitchen can unlock more of the nutrients you already eat and protect your testosterone at the same time, isn't it worth turning that pepper grinder a little more often? Sometimes the smallest daily habits deliver the biggest long-term rewards. Spice number 4, turmeric, the inflammation fighter. Turmeric, often called the golden spice, is best known for its active compound curcumin, which has been studied extensively for its role in lowering inflammation and supporting hormone health. A 2020 meta-analysis in the journal Nutrients confirmed that curcumin reduces systemic inflammation, particularly C-reactive protein, a marker closely linked to low testosterone and age-related disease. Animal research shows that curcumin protects Leydig cells, the very cells in the testes responsible for producing testosterone, from oxidative damage. This protection not only preserves hormone function, but also supports overall vitality. By calming chronic inflammation, turmeric contributes far beyond testosterone. It helps joint mobility, brain clarity, and cardiovascular health, all of which become more critical after 50. In my decades of practice, I've seen turmeric make a difference for men who felt stuck because of pain or fatigue. David, one of my patients at age 70, had such severe knee pain he avoided exercise altogether. We added turmeric with black pepper and olive oil into his daily meals. Within 2 months, his pain eased enough for him to begin light strength training again. That return to movement naturally boosted his testosterone, improved his energy, and lifted his mood. It wasn't a miracle pill. It was consistent, small changes working together. More evidence supports what I've seen firsthand. A study in the Journal of Medicinal Food found that men who supplemented with curcumin had improved endothelial function, meaning better blood vessel health, which directly supports circulation and energy. Another review in Frontiers in Pharmacology concluded that curcumin helps regulate blood sugar and reduce fat accumulation, both major factors in protecting testosterone. Turmeric is easy to weave into a daily routine. Half a teaspoon can be added to scrambled eggs, roasted vegetables, or soups. Many men enjoy golden milk made from warm milk, turmeric, black pepper, and a touch of honey. Blending turmeric into smoothies with ginger creates a powerful anti-inflammatory combination that works on multiple levels. While supplements exist, I often encourage starting with food-based turmeric paired with black pepper and healthy fats, since the combination maximizes absorption and delivers steady benefits when used consistently. So here's something worth thinking about. If a simple spice can lower the inflammation that silently chips away at your testosterone, ease pain that keeps you from exercising, and protect your heart and brain at the same time, why wouldn't you make it a daily habit? Sometimes the path to better hormones and better health starts with what you put on your plate. Spice number 3, cinnamon, the blood sugar balancer. Cinnamon is more than a flavor for coffee or desserts. It's one of the most effective natural tools for controlling blood sugar, and that has a direct impact on testosterone. When blood sugar runs high, insulin spikes, and over time this leads to insulin resistance. High insulin suppresses testosterone, leaving men feeling drained, gaining belly fat, and losing muscle. Cinnamon helps break this cycle by stabilizing blood sugar while also delivering antioxidants that protect hormone-producing cells. The science is solid. A 2019 study in clinical nutrition showed cinnamon improved insulin sensitivity in older adults, making their bodies respond better to glucose. Research published in Diabetes Care found cinnamon reduced fasting blood sugar by up to 29% in men with prediabetes. Lower blood sugar means less insulin, and with insulin under control, testosterone has the space to rise. Animal studies also suggest that cinnamon protects testicular cells and may even stimulate testosterone production directly. I've seen this in my practice many times. Robert, a 59-year-old patient, came to me tired, irritable, and gaining fat around his waist. His labs showed borderline diabetes and low testosterone. Rather than start him on medications right away, we adjusted his meals and added cinnamon to his daily routine, sprinkled on oatmeal, blended into his morning coffee, and even mixed into savory dishes. 6 months later, Robert had lost 12 pounds, his fasting glucose dropped, and his testosterone increased by 20%. With a smile, he told me, "Doc, my wife says I'm acting like the man she married again." Other studies confirm what I saw in Robert. A 2020 review in Phytotherapy Research found cinnamon supplementation consistently lowered blood sugar and improved cholesterol levels, both of which support hormonal health. By reducing metabolic stress, cinnamon helps the body naturally maintain stronger testosterone. Cinnamon is easy to work into daily life. Sprinkle it on oatmeal, yogurt, or cottage cheese for breakfast. Add it to coffee or tea for warmth and sweetness without sugar. Try it in savory recipes, chili, stews, or even roasted meats, where its depth of flavor surprises most men. I always recommend using Ceylon cinnamon, known as true cinnamon, since it contains lower levels of coumarin, a compound that in large amounts may affect the liver. Now consider this. If a simple spice can lower blood sugar, protect your metabolism, and raise testosterone naturally, why wouldn't you make it part of your routine? Sometimes the path to higher energy, leaner muscle, and stronger hormones starts with something as small as what you stir into your morning coffee. Spice number 2, garlic, the testosterone and heart health double agent. Garlic has always been valued for its flavor, but its real strength lies in how it supports both testosterone and cardiovascular health. Research published in Bioscience, Biotechnology, and Biochemistry in 2001 showed that animals given garlic alongside a high-protein diet had a significant rise in testosterone production. Scientists believe this comes from garlic's ability to lower cortisol, the stress hormone that directly competes with testosterone. When cortisol drops, testosterone has more room to thrive. Garlic also boosts nitric oxide levels, improving circulation and delivering more oxygen and nutrients to muscles, the brain, and the areas of performance men care most about. I've seen garlic change lives in simple ways. Samuel, a 63-year-old patient, came in with low testosterone and high blood pressure. Instead of rushing him into medication, I recommended adding 1 to 2 cloves of raw garlic with dinner each evening. Within 6 months, his blood pressure improved, his testosterone rose by 18%, and he told me, "Doc, my mornings feel like they used to 20 years ago." His wife later thanked me, saying she noticed the difference before he did. Other studies confirm these results. A 2016 review in the Journal of Nutrition highlighted garlic's role in reducing arterial stiffness and improving cholesterol, both key for heart health. Better circulation means better hormone delivery, and that translates into energy, stamina, and stronger male vitality. It's one of those rare foods that works on 2 critical fronts at once, protecting your heart while supporting your hormones. Using garlic isn't complicated. Crush fresh cloves and let them rest for 10 minutes before cooking. This activates allicin, the compound responsible for its benefits. Mix raw garlic with olive oil and lemon for a simple dressing, or roast whole bulbs for a sweeter, milder taste. Consistency matters more than quantity, so focus on adding small amounts daily. One caution, because garlic naturally thins the blood. Men already on anticoagulants should check with their doctor before using large amounts. So here's the thought worth considering. If something as simple as garlic can improve your circulation, protect your heart, and raise testosterone naturally, isn't it one of the easiest choices you can make for better health? Sometimes the most powerful solutions are also the simplest ones. Spice number 1, chili peppers. The testosterone igniter. Chili peppers stand at the top of the list because of capsaicin, the compound that gives them their heat and their power. Capsaicin has been shown to stimulate the hypothalamus, the part of the brain that signals testosterone production, while also revving up metabolism, fat burning, and dopamine release, which together boost energy, motivation, and drive. A 2014 French study found that men who regularly ate spicy foods had significantly higher testosterone than those who avoided them, suggesting that the heat in peppers does more than just fire up the taste buds. Beyond hormones, chili peppers improve circulation, fight inflammation, and protect the heart, making them a valuable spice for men over 50. I've seen the results firsthand. Henry, a 68-year-old patient, came to me frustrated by fatigue, weight gain, and declining drive. We introduced chili peppers into his daily meals, cayenne sprinkled on his morning eggs, jalapenos in his salads, and a dash of chili powder on his dinner. After 4 months, Henry told me, "Doc, I feel fire in my belly again." He had dropped 10 pounds, regained energy, and his testosterone had risen nearly 20%. It wasn't a drug or a supplement. It was simply using food as medicine. Other studies support what Henry experienced. Research in the Appetite Journal has shown that spicy foods not only increase metabolism, but also help reduce overall calorie intake by increasing satiety, a key benefit for men battling stubborn belly fat that often suppresses testosterone. A review in Critical Reviews in Food Science and Nutrition noted capsaicin's strong anti-inflammatory properties, which help protect vascular health and the very cells that produce testosterone. Adding chili peppers doesn't have to be complicated. A sprinkle of cayenne in eggs, soups, or stews adds instant heat. Jalapenos or chili flakes can spice up salads, tacos, or grilled meats. Even a warm evening tea made with cayenne, lemon, and honey can clear sinuses, improve circulation, and give a gentle testosterone-friendly boost. The key is consistency, not intensity. If you're not used to spice, start with small amounts and gradually build up. Your gut and taste buds will thank you. Now think about this. If one simple spice can boost your testosterone, help you burn fat, lift your energy, and protect your heart all at the same time, isn't it worth finding a way to work a little more heat into your meals? Sometimes the secret to feeling younger is simply turning up the spice. So there you have it, gentlemen. 8 powerful spices that don't just add flavor to your meals, but can help supercharge testosterone, improve energy, protect your heart, and bring back the drive that makes you feel alive. From fenugreek and ginger to garlic and chili peppers, each of these ingredients offers a natural, science-backed way to fight back against the slow decline that too many men accept as just aging. The truth is, you don't need expensive therapies or risky shortcuts to feel like yourself again. Sometimes the solution is right on your dinner plate, in the everyday foods and spices you've overlooked for years. The key is consistency, making these small daily choices that keep your hormones strong, your energy steady, and your confidence high well into your 60s, 70s, and beyond. So let me ask you, why settle for less when you still have the power to feel more? More strength, more vitality, more life. It's all within reach, and it starts with the choices you make today. Thank you for watching, and if you found value in this video, please hit that like button, share it with a friend who needs to hear this, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next life-changing tip for men's health. This is Dr. William, reminding you that your best years aren't behind you, they're ahead of you. Stay strong, stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next video.